Okay, so Mansoor must rejoin. For some reason, it has not accepted. Recording has begun. So, going back to our this thing. So, this is from my side, like 12th April, most likely date that you are likely to have. There are so many holidays in that week. We'll have to see. Let us now continue our operating system. Material is already distributed to all of you. You can, in fact, most of you can start reading. Uh, it is almost self-explanatory kind of thing. Two chapters from that book, both the slides as well as the complete book is made available to all of you. Okay, so but before moving on to the slides and all that, I want to make certain vocabulary or the terms that we use in operating systems to be clear, to be understood. So most of the times, computer science subject, if you properly understand the real meaning of these things, you can easily understand the subject, right? Vocabulary or the terms related to this subject is very important. You can't assume things. It's not English meaning here. It is a meaning associated with computer science, right? Meaning associated with operating systems. What is multi-programming? What is uni-programming? There are certain relevant definitions. You're not expected to remember the definitions and all that, but you may have to express in your own words without any ambiguity what each term is whenever asked, either in the interview board and all such kind of things. Anyhow, coming back to this, the very first thing is multi-programming versus uni-programming. So all these terms, in fact, have evolved over a period of time as the operating systems themselves have evolved, right? From the early days to the current situation. So for a period of that, like as and when some developments in the, for example, processor side, if there are any new additions that are done to your processor, your computer processor, microprocessor or computer organization or whatever, any changes that are happening there, because you make use of those things. The instruction set of the processor will be used, the registers, everything within the processor, whatever are there, and any architectural comfort that is provided within the processor, they will all be used in the design and development of the operating system. So new features in the processor, new features related to them, even in the operating system side also likely to find. So to begin with, early days, there used to be only uni-programming. The days when only a single program can be loaded. A single program can be loaded from the secondary storage into the main memory and then start executing that. Because of the von Neumann architecture, unless the program instructions are there in the memory, you can't even execute them or run them. So the memory used to be so low in the early days of the computers that they did not even think of to load multiple programs. So at a time, a single program, load all that, run that. Once the program is completed, then only again reset the entire memory or whatever, again load another program, run them, and so on. There is a lot of manual intervention in between. So there used to be like console operators, right? The operators that sit before the system. So programmers are different those days, console operators are different those days, in fact. Okay, so like that, it has gone. And after that, the memory size increased. Processor speed is high compared to the I/O devices and other things. Lot of wastage of the CPU time. The cost of the computers used to be very high in those days. So in order to get back at least certain revenue from that, you have to design your OS so that many programs can be simultaneously thought about. So in that context, the multi-programming idea has come. So all these things, whatever we are talking about, these things are the features of the operating systems. So you can say whether this, like the operating system, what you are supplying, does it support multi-programming? So if it supports, it is okay. If it doesn't, even for today, for some reason, then we don't buy such kind of things, probably. So multi-programming means ability of the operating system. Operating system allowing several programs to be loaded into the memory. And you have the boundaries for each process or for each program to be executed there. So that even if a wrong program is executed there, if it is trying to go out of the memory allocated to that particular process or whatever, then a lot of safety features, security features are to be provided so that it doesn't actually go into other program area, memory area, and then disturb that, right? So all these things are taken care in the multi-program. So the advantage of multi-programming is that because you have more programs loaded, you are executing one program whenever an IO is required. So IO device can be instructed to start preparing the data or whatever, and then the CPU now need not wait. It can move on to other program that is already loaded and start executing that. So this is what is called a switching. You are switching from execution of one program to the execution of another program. Right? All these things are the features of the operating system. So you switch to other program. So what it means is now the processor is busy running one program and devices are busy supplying or taking the data to and from the processor kind of thing. So that way you are making all the devices and the processor to be busy all the time with something or the other. Only then the productivity will be more. So waiting time is getting reduced as a part of it. So that is the idea behind multi-programming versus uni-programming. So naturally, in order to do this and so on, your processor must support certain memory related features, like how to load and how to understand. Like there are several memory related things you might have studied there, segmentation, and then there is something called virtual concept, virtual memory and all that. So earlier days it used to be number of programs that can be loaded used to be fixed, or they used to divide that particular entire memory into different areas so that those areas are fixed. Now, all that is very early, right? So later on, so nowadays it is mostly virtual memory concepts. And most of the systems support virtual memory concept where you can run your program without loading the entire program into the memory. You can load a part of the program and start running, because whatever instruction that you want for the next immediate thing, if they are all available there, you can start initiating. And as and when you want an instruction that is not there in the memory, right? So the processor is designed such that a kind of what you call memory fault is going to occur, because you are addressing an instruction, addressing a memory area where you have not yet loaded the instruction from there. So a kind of a fault will occur, page fault you normally call it. So whenever a page fault occurs, so again operating system now it has to identify what is the area in the secondary storage corresponding those instructions. You have to load all of them into the memory and again restart the corresponding instruction execution. So virtual memory is going to play a lot of role there. Multitasking versus unitasking, this is a different idea actually. Normally this relates to a user working on a single terminal. I'm working before one terminal, let us say. So if your operating system supports only unitasking, let us assume. Unitasking means you can only run only a single program from one terminal at a time. Right? So once you submit a command from the terminal, unless that command is complete, you cannot execute another command. Right? Or you cannot even submit another command from the same terminal. But multi-programming is still possible. You can have systems with unitasking with multi-programming, because in a multi-user environment, in fact, that is another thing that you may have to actually talk about, multi-user versus single user. In a multi-user environment, or like there may be multiple terminals also that are connected to your processor, your server. If several terminals are connected to the same server, then one person can sit before one terminal and submit different commands there. But all these commands sitting from various places by different users will be accepted by the same server. So they all have to be loaded. So many programs are to be loaded. That means it is multi-program. But sitting from a single terminal, you are able to fire only a single command. Unless that is complete, you cannot give another command. Such operating systems, we call them as unitasking. At a time, only a single task by one user from one terminal can be submitted. But it is a drawback again, right? So the user has to simply, he may have to idly sit there. Imagine a situation where a program is there, it is continuously asking for a lot of data probably, right? And you are giving something. And after that, it's taking a lot of time, maybe 10-15 minutes. So much of processing is there or whatever. So what is that the user has to do now? Right? So that's why the concept of multitasking has come into picture, where the user has a choice now to submit any command in two different modes. One mode is what is called the background mode, the other one is called as foreground mode. So you can run your command in the background, meaning that no no interaction, no user interface, no user interaction is allowed in the background programs. If your program requires a lot of data from, let us say, different files or databases and all that, user need not supply anything. Then you can safely run that program in the background, because the program can take all its data from various maybe files, databases or whatever, and continue running that. And any results that are coming, don't what it is, display them onto the screen, because it's going to clutter. So instead, the results will be stored into another file kind of thing, so that the user can see the results after some time by opening the corresponding file. So you can have any number of background programs running in the multitasking environment, but a single foreground task can be executed, which is going to interact with the user. So that is the meaning of the multitasking versus unitasking. The ability of the user sitting before a terminal to submit many commands in the background and one command probably in the foreground entity. So such operating system is considered to be having a facility called multitasking. Right? Multi-programming is the ability of that to load multiple programs. That is different. Then there is another thing called multiprocessing versus uniprocessing. You see now, like as changes or improvements are happening to the processor architecture, so new features are going to emerge. For example, so earlier there used to be processors with a single processor on the system. So you are actually developing or designing your operating system keeping in view that there is only a single processor. Now all of a sudden the processors industry like Intel and then AMD and all these institutions, these organizations or companies, because of the advancement in VLSI technology, you can put more and more circuitry into the same single chip. So what is happening now is you have multi-core processor are coming. That means on the motherboard now, a single processor there is going to have multiple processors. A single chip is going to have multiple processors. So whatever operating system that you earlier designed and developed meant for a single processor cannot make use of the multiple processors that are supplied in the new computer system. So you have to now design your system so that it understands that there are multiple processors, so that a different program can be loaded or can be given to different processors. Now a kind of parallel processing also is slowly coming. Because just like you have more and more number of IO devices that are continuously working, you are also having more and more number of central processing units that can work simultaneously. One CPU can work on program number 1, another CPU can work on program number 2. Now, two programs or two processes might be in the ready state. We call them as ready state or running state rather. Running state means both of them are running. Ready state means the programs are ready for the CPU to start execution. Whatever data that is required and all that is made ready, but because it is waiting there, because there are so many programs, at a time a CPU can execute only one program at a time, at any given point of time. CPU is busy executing instructions of only one of the program or process. So naturally, other programs, if they are completed, they have to wait in the queue. So that, like, once the CPU completes the current cycle of executing the program, then it can like switch the execution from one program to another program. This is what is called as context switching. So you are switching the execution of program one to another program based on certain context. Most of the times it is likely to happen when there is something called time slice, time shared systems. So each like a program is given certain fixed time, beyond which, if it is still continuing, it's going to be preempted. That means you are not going to continue the execution of the same program. You are preempting and taking another program to continue. So you are going to take up the same thing once again after some time, so that all the programs are going to get equal share of the central processing unit's time. So it is a fair kind of algorithm, right? So otherwise, sometimes what happens is within that time slice, there is something called in the time shared environment. So you identify what is the maximum time that a program is allowed to be continued to execute continuously. That is what is called as time slice. So beyond this time slice, no program will be allowed to continuously use the CPU time. So one is when the program is running, if there is some IO requirement. If there is some IO requirement even before the time slice, then because IO is slow, so naturally the CPU will instruct the device to get ready for that data and switch to another program. So that is what is called switching anyhow. The other one is forcible this thing, because the program is CPU intensive, meaning that lot of calculations are there, but not much of IO is there. So it is continuously doing the calculations. So in that case, to maintain the fairness, right, the operating system itself will preempt the currently running program. That is why you are calling it preempting, right? So that is going to happen by your schedulers, CPU schedulers in fact. Your CPU schedulers will decide, no, you are using my time quite a long time. It is high time that you stay in the queue. I will take up another job and execute that. I will come back to you once again. So that kind of stuff, right? So that all the processes are going to be given equal amount of time, so that all the users will feel good that their program also there is some progress as a part of it. So that is about time shared, time slice, and preemption. So you have to, like, in fact, another thing is like make a note of these things and probably search in the Google and try to understand. So what kind of explanations that are there, either in the YouTube, in case you are interested in the video kind of thing, or in the Google, if you are interested in some running notes, whatever. So that is about these things. The other one is single user versus multi-user. So at a point of time, how many users can multiple users use the system, right? Or only single user. That is another kind of thing. And the user authentication. right? Do you identify the user is a valid user or not? So there must be a username, user ID, and some kind of password by which you are identified as a valid user or authenticated user of this particular system. So for that, user management and all that modules are going to come into the picture. Other terms that are very important in operating system, sometimes database also, synchronous versus asynchronous. Synchronous means that you have to wait, right? The meaning of synchronous meaning that you have to basically synchronizing with time. That's what you mean by. If two people are there, they are synchronizing means that both of them have to meet together. If one person has come, the other person has not come, what to do? You have to wait. You have to wait for the other person also to come. So synchronous things, so you can design systems in a synchronous manner or you can design systems in asynchronous manner. The advantage of synchronous is that yes, both of them can meet, can talk, can do whatever and all that. But the drawback is that if one person is ready, the other person is not, then he is made to wait. So those issues are there. Unwanted waiting are actually introduced into synchronous systems. Instead of that, in the case of the asynchronous, you only make an intent or interest that you want to communicate or you want to do something with so and so, whatever. But you don't wait whether that thing is going to happen or it doesn't happen, it doesn't matter. Only your interest you will express and you continue doing your activity. You are continuing your other activity in asynchronous. Synchronous, so the moment you express your this thing, if the other person or resource is not available, you have to wait, right? You have to wait for that particular. For example, there are so many examples that you can give. You want to make a call, make a telephone call. So when you are making a telephone call, when is that you can actually call, like a conversation or communication happen? Only when both of them are there. You make a call, the other person is not picking up, you can't do anything. You are continuously waiting for the other person to pick up. He doesn't pick up, then it's a missed call. So again, you have to. So it is a synchronous activity. You are continuously waiting. Whereas you want to send a message, a kind of a message to the other person. Probably, let us say, by post. You want to send something by post. You don't wait here, right? You only write whatever message that you want to send, write the address and all that. So, and then post it into the post office, whatever. That's it. And then you think as if like it's likely to be delivered, the other person is going to, at his own time and this thing, is likely to respond. So that is an asynchronous activity. Telegram is an asynchronous activity. Email is an asynchronous activity. Because you just simply send a message through email or even WhatsApp message also, in fact. Right? So you are only sending. Whereas WhatsApp, again, within that, there is a call. So that is again synchronous. So try to understand the meanings. They are very important. These terms come across in many other subjects also. If you are thorough with the actual meaning, then there will be hardly anything there, actually. You will easily understand the other things. So synchronous is mostly waiting mechanism. Asynchronous is going to remove the waiting, basically. And you have the liberty to continue doing other activities. So system calls, sometimes they are also called as blocking system calls, right? Blocking. So it's going to block your execution. Blocking versus non-blocking system calls. That means blocking system call means it's going to make you to wait. For example, you want to read something from a device, right? So reading is a blocking system call. Unless the reading is complete, you cannot move to the next thing. So whereas like the other things, like for example, like you want to read something from the keyboard, if the user doesn't type at all for 1 hour or so it is getting blocked for 1 hour, as simple as that. Whereas you want to do some calculation, you want to find out what is the square root of something. So in order to find the square root of something, no other user requirement is there, right? So the system itself will do all the necessary calculation, and once the result is there, it's going to supply it. It is a non-blocking mechanism. But finding square root is not a system call anyhow, but as a, to make you to understand, I'm just saying what is meant by that. So maybe opening a file, whatever. So can be a non-blocking. So there is hardly anything, like it's going to identify whether such a device is there or not. If it is there, it's going to open. Otherwise, no. So blocking versus non-blocking. Blocking means is going to make it to system to wait. So all the blocking related system calls sometimes, or even library functions, they may provide even their corresponding non-blocking versions if required, asynchronous versions. Right? So that is another terms that one has to get used to. CPU scheduling, meaning that when there are many programs that are ready, so which program is to be taken up next time, right? So some algorithm will be there, CPU scheduling algorithm will decide what is the next program that is to be taken up. There are different criteria for that, where you can take a very small program, or you can take a program that can be finished fast, right? So different criteria can be considered for picking up the next program to be called. Or the other criteria can be as simple as a queue. So you maintain a queue of programs that are waiting for a processor. In the queue, whichever is the very first one that has joined into the queue will be picked first. So that is considered as a most fairness algorithm kind of thing. You don't judge any based on any other thing except the time of arrival. Whichever comes first into the queue will be taken up for executing that. So such things we call them as a queue there, and algorithms there, CPU scheduling algorithm and so on. There are different types of scheduling algorithms. One is short-term scheduling algorithm, and the other one is long-term and all that. So you study that, you should be able to understand what the meaning is and all that. But these things are all like in the olden operating systems and all that, whereby as we know here, you can increase the productivity of the overall computer system by engaging all the devices as far as possible all the time and the central processing unit. Right? By making busy all the devices and the processor as far as possible, you can increase naturally the productivity. So what it means is you must have actually enough number of programs or processes that are CPU intensive. CPU intensive means there will be a lot of calculations, but very little I/O, input-output requirements. Similarly, the jobs can be job or process, both are one and the same. Sometimes task also. So a process can be CPU intensive or I/O intensive. I/O intensive means too much of reading and writing. There is very little calculation. So that is going to give a lot of work to the I/O devices. CPU intensive will give a lot of work to the CPU device, but not to the I/O device. If you have only CPU intensive jobs, all the I/O devices will be idle. If you have only I/O devices, I/O intensive jobs, processor will always be idle most of the time. There is hardly anything to do, but the devices are busy there anyhow. So you require a proper job mix, so that at any point of time, all the devices are having their own work. CPU also is having its own this thing. Then you can run more and more number of programs. So your long-term schedulers will decide about which programs to be accepted, so that there is a proper job mix. Once you accept it, then anyhow you'll have to continue running those programs and so on like that. Right? So that is about the various terms that you have here. If If you have any questions so far on this particular thing, we can address that. Otherwise, we can move on to the next things, whatever that we'll have to. Any questions or anything for that matter, either on today's topic or any other issues that you have? I don't know, like feel free to ask. Any questions? Hello? All of you are there? Are you getting my voice?
Yes, sir.
So any questions then?
No, sir.
So hereafter, probably continuing the classes in the afternoon at this point of time may also be difficult for all of you to concentrate, listening and all that. If possible, I think we should be able to schedule. I think all of you have some kind of class leader or something like that. Do you? All branches? You have some representative, class representative or something. Anything like that is there?
Yes, sir. I'm the data science here, sir.
No, that's okay. Like who is the person will come later. First of all the branches have some person like that, right? I can take it
Yes,
for
sir.
granted.
Yes, sir.
Right. Okay. Wonderful. So then you decide, like, so because it is online, after all, like all of you might be at your homes and all that, we can start. We don't have to start at 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock and all that. We can start at any convenient time where you are more receptive and I am more like, okay, uh, ease at delivering my lecture and so on. Most likely it's going to be very pleasing in the morning times. So at what time it is, I'm just leaving it to you. Tomorrow still will continue same this thing, but next week at least onwards, we should be able to change our timing so that uh, things will be better there. So all your class leaders, representatives, whatever you discuss within your group, and again with other branches, finally come to this thing. So not more than 1.5 hours at a time is required. Maybe even 1 hour also is good enough. Sometimes it may stretch a little bit, sometimes it may fall short of it. So those are the things. Okay, so here is one question now. Do we have types of scheduling processes? Uh, no, scheduling algorithm, right? There are different scheduling algorithms. Essentially, like what is the best way, like how to increase the productivity, how to see that all the processes are continuously, there is some movement. Essentially, there is something called starvation problem. If any, if your algorithm is not what you call queue based, if it is not a fairness algorithm, if it is not a fair algorithm, that means it is going to decide based on some criteria, no matter what criteria it is, other than the queue mechanism. It is going to be, may not be a fairer algorithm. So it may result in sometimes something like certain processes might end up continuously waiting because your scheduler is going to decide based on certain criteria and that criteria will never happen for that particular process. For example, you always favor short process, let us say, small jobs or whatever. Right? If there is a bigger job that is waiting, and after that, many shorter jobs are continuously coming. Right? Naturally, your scheduling algorithm is favoring the short this thing, and they are available all the time. And then this fellow who has come, like maybe well before all these other this thing, a bigger job or a longer job, is continuously made to wait, and that is what is called a starvation. Such kind of algorithms suffer from starvation. Then what you have to do, maybe one point is like you take even starvation also into consideration. That means waiting time. So for if a process is waiting for, let us say, this many number of seconds or minutes or whatever, increase its priority. So essentially, these are in some way priority-based algorithms. You are prioritizing short-term jobs, shorter jobs, long-term jobs or long jobs. You are like disliking for whatever reason, because you want to showcase that, oh, I have executed this many number of processes. Right? So we do all these things. It's a common sense kind of thing, mostly. Right? So Ola and other fellows also in the early days, they used to get some points. If you, what it is, run or if you give your service for 10 people, you get so much money for that particular day. So that means you favor short trips, have more number of short trips and earn that particular benefit. But in the process, if there is somebody who want to travel to a longer distance, nobody is interested in that particular fellow. So like that, see, basically you read books, right? So then there is a lot of common sense oriented only in computer science. And based on that, we can always have the discussions anyhow. So that's what it is, like scheduling algorithms there. Another criteria there is, one is long-term and the other one is short-term schedulers. Long-term scheduler will decide whether a process is to be accepted or not to be accepted. Because if already a number of processes are currently accepted and they are already running, do you want to accept one more and increase the load on the system, and thereby reduce the what it is, the speed at which the other currently running programs also will suffer, and this new program also will suffer. So it is a kind of a like a traffic police kind of thing, which would like to allow or not to allow. Once you allow it, that is going to be serviced, right? So within the processes that are currently running, out of them, which one to be picked by the CPU so that its instructions will be executed? That is your actual CPU scheduler. That we can normally call it a short-term scheduler or CPU scheduler. Long-term scheduler or job scheduler is the other one. That scheduler, it doesn't run the program, but it will decide whether to accept this as a new process or not. Is going to be decided based on that. So, any other questions then? So we have written a part of the program on the system calls and all that, a day, like in the very first day, but we could not actually continue on that for a number of reasons. We will address that a little later. And today also, in fact, I'm not that 100% active, like only last 2-3 days I have been on travel. So I feel like taking a break today also, in fact. So tomorrow we will have a little lengthier session. So if you have any other small questions, I would like to, and after that I want to close today. And tomorrow, the second chapter on this OS, we are going to talk about. You can start, you can prepare and then attend. All right, so far, whatever classes have happened, all the videos are already uploaded. And there are good many number of videos on the same topics by different people. You can as well, I can also show you if required. Maybe tomorrow I can just give you something along those lines. You read anything, it doesn't matter, as long as you are following or learning the subject. But because we are taking the online session, some recording material is there, we are just simply posting them. It's difficult to actually compare because a lot of waiting will be there, a lot of explanation will be there and all that. Okay. So then if nothing is there, like start discussing and all that. If possible by tomorrow, you just tell me the timings and all that, so that we may have to send the a video link, like this video conference link for the other classes. Preferably, like it might be what I am thinking. Let me, if we can complete our sessions by 9 o'clock, it will be wonderful. We should complete by 9. That's what I'm saying. Whatever time it is, like for me, no issue. Okay, so thank you then. So I'm just trying to stop the recording and slowly close the entire thing.